picture. Curtain lights, this is it. The night of nights. No more rehearsing and nursing a part. We know every card by heart.
Hello there, true believers. This is Head Speaks, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. As usual, I am your host, Aaron Moss, aka Head. This is my mostly monthly Headcast, where I talk about comics, movies, role-playing games, TV shows, and anything else geeky that I want. So sit back and enjoy the ride. Let's begin.
What height will hit? On with the show, this is it.
And welcome to this segment of
Faster than a speeding bullet.
In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Long Box.
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Once again, I am going to continue with my multi-epic Armageddon 2001 crossover. Today, we're looking at Detective Comics Annual number 4. But before I get to that, let me introduce my special guest. As you know, I've been bringing a guest from either the podcasting or the internet world to join me on these. This month, I have a returning guest. Once again with me is John Jack. Hey, John.
Yeah, how's it going?
All right, glad to have you back on. I had you on last time to cover the Batman Annual.
Mm-hmm.
And I got you back for some more Batman, so glad you could make it.
Happy to be here.
Let me go ahead and give a little information on this issue. So this is Detective Comics Annual number 4, as I said. The cover date was 1991, but the on-sale date was August the 20th of 1991. The cover price was $2. Title, Succession. Written by Louise Simonson. Colorist and artist was Tom Greenberger. The letter was Albert Tobias de Guzman. Editor, Dennis O'Neil. And the cover was by Tom Greenberger. Synopsis. Our story starts with Waverider confronting Batman once again. We're told that Batman perceives him as one of his villains, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Waverider reaches in and grabs Batman's heart, ready to crush it if he determines that Batman will become Monarch. We then flash forward 10 years, of course, to where Batman is once again fighting Ra's al Ghul. During the fight, Rage falls into a vat of bioengineered virus. The rest of Raj's men takes Batman down, and then their leader crawls from the vat. As they put their dying leader into the Lazarus pit, Batman makes his escape. As he scales down the mountain, his batarang comes loose and he falls down the mountain. Talia's men goes to recover the body, but are beaten to the punch by Tim Drake. Per Batman's request, they take the Dark Knight detective home to the Batcave. Robin then goes to visit Gordon when the bat signal is sent out. Gordon tells Robin how the city is in bad shape. When Robin later tells Bruce this, he says that Batman is dead. The next night, Batman returns and continues to fight crime for the next several weeks, until he falls into an ambush set by Talia, whose men gun Batman down. Talia removes his mask to find Tim Drake is dressed as Batman. Disappointed it's not her love, they toss the body over the side of a building. Bruce hears the news report about a young man was found dead, dressed as Batman. Realizing what happened, Batman begins working on technology that will allow him to return. Chapter 2 of the story starts with Batman flipping in the rain, landing on a sign for the Roxy, as shown on the cover. He confronts some hoods. Not only is Batman back, but he's stronger and more like Superman than he was before. He begins working the street to find out who killed the boy in the Batman costume. He even confronts the new police commissioner looking for the answer. Later, Batman talks to Gordon, who comments about Batman's new, darker approach. His conversation leads him to confront the Joker in Arkham, which leads him to a warehouse where a young Hood, who is bound up, tells Batman that it was men in black with a skull on their uniform that killed the other Batman, which leads Batman back to Raz's temple. There he finds a statue to Raz. Also, Talia was waiting for him, letting him know that her father didn't survive the last time he went into the pit. As Talia throws herself into Batman's arms, he pushes her aside, figuring out that Talia is the one who shot Tim. She said she didn't mean for it to happen, that he was their intended target. At which point, Batman is attacked by Talia's men. After a couple of pages of fighting, Batman is once again lying bleeding, crippled on the mountain. Talia has his dead, dying body taken and then placed into the Lazarus pit. As the body is marinating in the pit, the techs realize that Batman had a bomb placed inside his prosthetics, which blows the base to smithereens. Liv and Waverider realize that Batman would never become the Monarch. The end. So that's the synopsis. Go ahead and take a look at the cover. The cover, we show Batman on top of a sign for the Roxy, which I'm assuming is a hotel. We get a couple bats on the lower corner. We get our trade dress along the top. It says Armageddon 2001, Detective Comics, lightning flashing in the background, his cape flying up in the wind and the rain. John, what are your thoughts on this cover?
I think it's really detailed, and the colors are very well contrasted against the dark background and the dark subject. I like seeing the gargoyles in the forefront as well as the bats, and the lightning bolt in the back is really, really well bled out into the background without taking it over.
Yeah, I agree. It's very nice. I do like that it's a page out of the comic pretty much. I do like the bats and the gargoyles front and center. We get Batman in a classic crouched Batman pose with the cape flying up around him. Like you said, the colors are very nice. The lightning bolt in the background, it's there. It's very prominent without being overdone.
Mm.
So on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you give this? 1 being horrible, 2 being okay, 3 being a decent cover, 4 being pretty damn good, and 5 being an excellent cover worthy of being mounted on the wall?
I'd probably call it a 4. Yeah, it's not quite poster quality or anything, but it's definitely a cover to look at and enjoy.
And I will give it I'm going to have to agree with you. I think it is a 4. It's almost poster worthy. I'm not sure what it's missing, but not quite there. But it is a very nice, it's more than just an average cover.
Yeah, there isn't much dead space or anything. It's nice.
Yeah, it's very well, Hoover laid it out very well. And it's just, the art coloring on it is very good. Okay. And now let's get some thoughts on the issue. Go ahead and why don't you give your thoughts and opinions.
So I thought this issue, the art was a lot stronger than I liked the art in this issue a lot more than I did in the Batman issue. And it was interesting seeing some older versions of some villains. Although Ra's al Ghul's purple suit is probably the worst suit I've ever seen him wear. It's kind of reminiscent of Airwaves, late 70s, high shoulders outfit with the bad pointy gauntlets. It's not great. We do see Joker and Two-Face at points during the issue, and they look good with a little age on them. I think the Batcave, there's a panel I really liked. Page numbers. There's a panel I really like where they're down below and they're kind of out of focus, and there's just a whole bunch of bats up above, and the bats are really detailed and cool. I like seeing well drawn animals because a lot of artists kind of blow off good animals and instead focus on other stuff, which is, story wise, I think the story's pretty interesting, if not a little bit by the numbers, with Batman getting hurt and having to retire. And although, it's, 15 years before anything like Batman Beyond, but it is kind of close to what Robin pre-Crisis went through on Earth 2, where he had to replace dead Batman. All in all, it doesn't bother me really, though. The way that Talia's men just hucked him off a rooftop is pretty brutal. Get rid of that trash.
Oh, it's not Bruce. Toss him over.
Let's get rid of him.
Yeah.
That was brutal. And I liked the finale where it even pushed to his absolute ending limit. He doesn't break down or anything, and Waverider understands that.
Right.
Although the actual, in the overall event, it kind of completely invalidates Waverider's method of figuring out who Monarch is if he can go to the same person on 2 different days and get 2 different results. And that bothers me more than almost anything. He goes to Superman, 4 times?
3.
Yeah, and all 3 times.
He had 3 books, so...
Mm-hmm. All 3 times he gets different answers? Today Bruce is in a good mood. He's not Monarch. Tomorrow he's really mad. He is Monarch. The next day he's sad and he actually becomes Blue Beetle. We don't know why. And what's the basis here? It's Carl Sagan talking about astrology once said that any science where you can go to a person and ask them what your astrological sign means for you for one day, and they tell you, and then you go one block away and ask another person, and they tell you something different. That is not a science. That is superstition and guesswork, which is what Waverider is employing.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to this when I do the final issue, but I will mention a little bit right now that I do agree with you. That's when I first read this, I just read the story and I didn't really give as much thought as I'm doing now. Of course, I'm a 40-year-old man sitting here reading a 30-year-old comic for a podcast, so I am giving it a bit more thought. But yeah, think about it now. Yeah, Waverider is basically, I don't want to say useless, but it doesn't help if he has to look at the same person 3 times, or 2 times in Batman's case, to see if he's going to become Monarch or not, because if it's going to change that much. And
yeah, you could ask 100 times.
Yeah, and eventually, and if Monarch's identity could change, because in the Batman annual, okay, well, he's not going to become Monarch. Well, let's check him out, Detective. He may become Monarch now. Well, if Monarch's identity could change like that, then and every time he looks at somebody, the future's changed. It's kind of useless. And I know I'm devoting like a year and a half of my podcasting life to this series, but looking back at it, yeah, it's kind of a useless series in that respect, because if the identity of the Monarch can change, which it does, which we'll get into eventually.
Well, the second panel of the first page, he said, one of the editorial or the monologue boxes says, "Will this darker mood perhaps reveal a darker future?"
Right.
So is he literally just going off their moods and feelings, and that's what shows him what's going to happen? Like, is he saying that your mood in the moment can create an alternate future? Like, that seems silly.
Yeah, it's. Well, I didn't think that much about this back when I first read this, but yeah, looking back at it now and reading all these annuals and talking about it when he got different guys, it's just, it's very, well, yeah, if Batman could change one month he's not Monarch, the next maybe he is again. And Superman 3 times is actually changing his identity of who Monarch is, but whenever you look at their future, that's going to change things.
And then eventually they did end up changing Monarch's identity.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a metaphor for the event.
Maybe a bit. Yeah, I'll get into that later. And some thoughts I had on this. Like I say, on this first page when he confronts Batman, he tells us that Batman sees as one of his enemies. Normally, when he takes a look at somebody, we actually see who he is. We see who he's changed into. Now we're just seeing Waverider, and he's telling us, well, Batman sees me as his enemy. I don't quite know if that works in the scheme of how it's been shown so far.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like you said, it's got the average Batman versus Ra's al Ghul story. They fight. Batman gets his back broke. Again, this is a year or two before, maybe 3 years before he actually does get his back broke.
Mm-hmm.
Regular continuity-wise, kind of foreshadowing.
About 2 years.
I can't remember if it was 93 or 94 when it actually happened.
Yeah.
But again, that's always been something that came up with the Lazarus Pit. So, will it heal him this time? Eventually it's going to stop working.
Mm.
But yeah, I do like they captured Batman, and as they got him tied up, he's got a ceramic capsule hidden in his mouth, filled with acid that he's able to break on his ropes. Good thing they didn't break in his mouth and fill his mouth full of acid.
Get punched and burn his tongue off.
I'm Batman. What? I'm Batman. I'm the Dark Knight. What your tongue, Batman?
Burn his tongue real bad.
Yeah, that could have ended badly. But, yeah, it's funny how, usually Batman's Batarang doesn't fail, but for the story purposes, of course, it's going to come loose and Batman's going to fall to the ground and be severely injured.
Well, it is kind of funny. It kind of reminds me of, like, a video game where you die and then you go back and then you continue along the original timeline to finish the game. So in the game, you're an undefeated,
Right.
And so the Batarang has worked thus far every single time until the time it doesn't. And that's just the way it is. And
yeah. And Tim comes and rescues him. I like here on page, like I said, the pages aren't numbered. I think it's around page 12 or so, where they're flying off with Batman in the plane, and Tim's flying, and Alfred, very old, and Alfred is sitting there next to Batman. The last two panels there where Batman's saying, like, take me home to the Batcave. Don't want to die in a hospital. And he just passes out. I think those pages are very well done. And it's very much shows the gravity of the situation, that Batman is very, very damaged.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the Wayne Manors falling to pieces, and they're living down in the Batcave because the manor is so destroyed. Moving on, I see, we get a city without Batman. They're on page 16, I'm going to call it. They turn the bat signal on, and we get this punk with his girl, and she's like, the bat signal will come. Dream on, lady. Dream on. And everyone's seeing different people looking at the bat. Hey, ain't no more Batman. Batman's dead. And then we get Robin in his Robin costume. Again, 10 years later. He still looks good in the Robin costume.
Well, yeah, he's still wearing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, did I miss something? So here he's talking to Commissioner Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
But then a few, weeks later, when Batman resumes, wasn't that the commissioner he was talking to, the other guy? After Batman returns and he starts scaring everybody in his battle armor.
Let's see.
I'm scrolling back up. Wasn't that the commissioner that he visited? That was the younger, dark-haired guy? Yeah, because one of the guys, they're on page around 35, story page. After he beats the guys up, he goes all the way back, and the guy's like, give me the police commissioner on the phone. And then we cut to the police commissioner, who's a younger guy, when Batman visits and threatens him. So I'm assuming Gordon retired sometime in a couple of weeks between.
Well, I think the first time you see him, he says, "I'm not commissioner anymore."
Did I miss that when Robin was talking to him?
Yeah, it's the second panel of the page where he's talking to Robin.
Oh, okay, you're right. I did. Okay, so it's just me. I missed that then. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was cleaning. And in fact, he was cleaning out his desk. Okay, I must have skimmed that or something. He was turned out with a new mayor. Okay. Okay, yeah, I saw him and told it. So yeah, there is a new police commissioner.
Mm-hmm. Who's in the pocket of the mob, according to the next panel. And
again, so this Tim takes up the mantle of the Batman, and I do like how in the future of the actual continuity, Dick comes back and takes up the mantle of the Batman.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like, and then there was that future Batman, was it Detective Comics 666, where Damian became a Batman. So I do like the fact that, Robins tend to become Batman at some points.
Jason tried a couple times too, but he had like guns and stuff. Yeah.
And then, we get Tim shot down by Raj's men. Actually, I guess it's Talia's men now. And yeah, like you said, oh, this isn't my beloved. Like, find a way to treat someone you love. Batman is gone. Escape you forever. Whoever is, he's history. He's Batman's like the boy wonder. Like, lady, I'm a man.
I'm 35 years old.
Boy wonder. I'm the man wonder. Like, just dispose of his body. And they throw his body over like, it's Batman. Maybe he wasn't dead earlier. He sure is dead now. It's a great one. I like that. Yeah, and overall, I say, going through the story real quick further, we get the crime going on. I like the little montage of crime going on in the streets. People getting, Batman's dead, so they're getting more brave. And meanwhile, in the Batcave, we see Batman working on his prosthetics and the cybernetics to make himself better than before. And I do like the beginning of Chapter 2 when he lands on top of the Roxy sign, and we get... And again, this is what the cover could have been, where the lightning takes over a little bit more. And I do like when
a lot less contrast.
Yeah. I do like when the cover shows a scene from the book. And I think the cover was a lot more well done, because it wasn't as bright.
That is a really nice sound effect in the middle of the page, though.
Yeah, the crack.
I like that a lot. Who lettered this? It is National Letter Appreciation Day. Did you know that?
Oh, I did not know that. Oh, congratulations. Yeah, letters don't get the love they deserve. The letter of this was Albert Tobias de Guzman.
Excellent.
Was the letter. So is that the letter?
Props to Albert.
Is that the letter that does the sound effects, or is that the artist? Yep. Okay.
Pretty much any text on the screen. We actually we reached out and asked the letterer recently on the site I write for, because we were looking for clarification on that. And pretty much any text on the screen, including sound effects, or on the page, is letterer.
Okay, yeah, see, I always rack that up to the artist. I always count that as part of the actual story, so that's good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes even like the lettering on the sign would be them, but I don't know, that looks like it's part of the art.
Right. That's good. It's good to know. And he jumps on top of that sign. I'm back.
Who's he talking to?
Himself.
A little flip. Yeah, I guess he's just excited. That's okay.
Actually, he's probably talking to the hoods down the street that's about ready to take on, who is this, Martha and Jimmy? Martha, what'd you say? Oh, sorry.
I know, right? I was just thinking that.
Martha. Like they're shooting him, and the bullets just bounce off. The Batman's dead. I got better. Man, he just broke our guns. Get him. It's like he got his eyes in the back of his head. Bullets bounce off him. He's turned into a Superman. I just like the again. I wouldn't like this on a regular basis. This rough and tough Batman.
It's pretty 90s. I mean, basically exactly what Asbats did with the cybernetics and the getting bulletproof suit and stuff.
Yeah, pretty much Asbat before he became Asbat. But I do like that. I do like that the cybernetics are taking their toll on Batman's body. And we see the Batcave him and Alfred's talking about how it's wearing him down, but he's still going to do it because he's got to find out who killed his partner. Mm-hmm. And I do like this on here on page 36, I'm going to call it, where the commissioner's on the phone and the new commissioner's on the phone and Batman's sitting in the window, crouched over. Said, "You know the question. I heard you must know the answer." I just love that first panel there, the way Batman's crouched in the window, just waiting for him. I'm here. And then again, Gordon's telling Batman, like this, where they're talking, and Gordon's talking to Batman. He's like, "So was it Robin? I was afraid of that. I don't know who killed him. Does that mean you're going to beat me up too? Drop me from window? Tough times call for tough methods, Gordon. If you knew, you tell me." So another question I have, maybe I missed something. So he goes and talks to Arkham Asylum. He goes to Arkham Asylum, talks to Two-Face, which leads him to the Joker, which leads him to Bates Warehouse, Pier 43. And we get this one guy that saw Talia's men toss Tim off the building. Who tied him up and left him here? Did I miss that?
The Joker?
But I assume the Joker's been in Arkham Asylum this entire time.
Oh, maybe he's been there a really long time.
Because apparently he was there when Tim got killed. But yeah, that's one thing I got. Who bound and gagged him? Why tie him up and leave him gagged? I just don't unless I'm missing something, I don't understand why. I understand why that scene happened, why Batman had to talk to him to find out, it was Raz's men. Yeah, I don't know why the guy was tied up and gagged, unless maybe some of Joker's men did it. But I don't quite understand that step.
Yeah, no, it's really weird.
I mean, I like the rest of the story, and the story's good. But yeah, that scene there, when I read this, I'm like, why is he tied? Why? Why is he tied up? Why is he gagged? I don't understand that. Who did that?
Any questions?
No. Not for me.
Yes? Yes?
I don't get it.
What exactly don't you get?
It turns from a building into a robot, right?
Precisely.
Well, what's fun about that?
Well, if you had read your industry breakdown, you would see that our success in the action figure area has climbed from 27% to 45% in the last 2 years. There, that might help.
Oh.
Yes.
I still don't get it.
Because, I mean, as Batman, he could have hunted the guy down wherever he was at. They could have had him working at the warehouse or whatever, and Batman show up and, beat a confession out of him.
Yeah. He could have tracked him down instead of he was handed the answer. Yeah,
it just sounds came across really weird to me.
Well, at that point, there's only like 5 pages left in the issue.
Yeah.
they had to move it along.
Yeah, I guess. Here on near the end, page 50 something. Once again, Batman's, as I talked about in the synopsis, left lying on the cliff. Not left. He's on the cliff, bleeding and dying once again. And Talia takes him, puts him in the Lazarus pit, and he's anticipated this, so he's got explosives inside of his cybernetic body somewhere that causes the entire mountainside to blow up. I do like that page on page 55, 54, when the outside of this with the skull and just the explosion just blowing it to pieces. Like, even in death, you have won. And then we end up with Waverider sitting there staring cross-legs, floating and watching the entire mountainside just get destroyed. And again, Batman kind of felt his presence. Some heroes can feel it, some can't really tell. And he says he feels like an alternate reality or a bizarre fantasy of the future. My life, he kind of remembers what happened. My life and death, Tim's, Talia's. It's fading like a broken dream. But overall, I like this issue overall. Like I said, there were a few qualms here and there that I don't quite understand, but overall, as a story, it was good. It's just as far as the whole Armageddon 2001. Again, as we've said, as I reread this, I realize that parts of it doesn't quite make sense in the whole.
Yeah, the overall story. Well, from the start, in my opinion, the overall story is much weaker than the sum of its parts. I think the real strength of this event is in that it's a bunch of vignettes into possible alternate futures, and those are often the most interesting stories. Stories like Rock of Ages, Kingdom Come, just
right.
alternate possible futures. Recently, Nightwing New Order was really, really good. It's a strong story standpoint. Unfortunately, just basically the reasoning for bringing all the alternate stories together is much weaker than the alternate stories themselves. Because for the most part, I've read probably, I think I have 11 out of 14 issues of this event, and right. I'd say I really enjoyed 9 or 10 of them.
I read them all when I first got it, and then I've again been rereading them all for the event. And I say for the most part, the individual annuals as a standalone annual have been pretty good. Some don't tie into the whole event too well, and others, I say, the connecting tissue of it kind of, if you look at it too closely, you can see that it's special effects and makeup and not really connective tissue. It pulls apart too easily.
Yeah, the story itself unravels much more quickly. But I think they basically just need an excuse to have a bunch of alternate future stories all in one event. It's basically an entire year's worth of annuals that are all Elseworlds, specifically based on characters that a lot of them were never going to get an Elseworld otherwise.
Right. Well, I do like in a few years they actually have an Elseworld series of annuals, which they drop all the pretense of let's tie these together with some big storyline, just give each annual as Elseworld. I do like that. So I do see what you're talking about. That this is kind of just Elseworlds tied together loosely.
Or like a 1 year later kind of situation where they just wanted to have some writers take a crack at where they thought the comics would be in 10 years, which is pretty wrong.
Way wrong on some. But, well. So do you have any thoughts or opinions on the story?
Yeah, despite the overall event being weak, the thing that's interesting is if you don't buy the 2 main series issues and ignore the 2 or 3 Waverider pages per issue, the issues are all, for the most part, either good to really good.
Right.
And this one, I'd say, it's pretty good. I mean, it's entertaining. It gives you what it wants. It has the bones of a mystery. It's not a mystery at all. But it wants to be a mystery, if that makes sense.
I definitely, it tries to set itself up as a mystery. Who is, in fact, that was one of the questions, which hero becomes a villain, but as we talked about earlier, it's not really a very good mystery, seeing how, depending on the hero's mood that day, on whether he becomes Monarch or not.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, I will say the last page, it does say that from what I've seen, I don't think he'll become Monarch. So maybe he's more looking for proof of character more than actually definitively a character becoming the Monarch. Although he does eventually definitively get one character becoming the Monarch.
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah, in a way. And then later a different character kind of becomes the Monarch.
Yeah, that's why I say sort of definitively becomes the Monarch. They do change it later on.
Yeah, retconned it a couple years later.
But well, any other thoughts on this issue?
No, I feel good about it.
Right on. Well, I'm glad you could join me once again to talk about this. I enjoy having you on my show. We'll definitely have to have you on for something else at some point.
Yeah.
But before I let you go, why don't you tell everyone out there in the reality world where they can find more about you?
You can look me up in my group For the Love of Comic Books. You can read articles that I write on comicwatch.com and Paint Monk's Library, or you can follow any one of my fan pages, which are Batman Comics, Superman, Man of Steel, Comic Book Hats Without Context, Marvel Comic Madness, DC Comics Cavalcade. God, there's so many. Swords and Sorcery comic books, or Swordsmen and Sorcerers comic books, rather. Is that all of them? Might be all of them.
Right on. Well, again, thank you very much for joining me. I definitely recommend people check out your other stuff, and we'll talk at you next time.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me, Aaron.
All right, I want to take a break right now. We'll be back with something else in a minute. Listen to these promos, and we'll be right back. Head Speaks will be back after these important messages.
Can I get a tall chai?
A large black coffee.
And I suppose you're here with no agenda, as per usual?
On the contrary, I'm here for comics.
I think I can help all of you. Hello, I'm the caffeinated Clinton Robinson, and I host a podcast called Coffee and Comics. On this podcast, I summarize, review, and discuss comic book issues, stories, and related media, usually in the span of time it takes to have a cup of coffee. Sometimes I'm joined by a guest, and sometimes I'm flying solo. So pour the coffee, take a sip, and turn up the volume as you listen to the Coffee and Comics podcast. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, and directly on coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com. And remember, this is where the comics are never too old and the coffee is never too cold.
After a long day of criminal activity, there's nothing I like better than to sit down and listen to the old radio. Wait a minute, that's not a radio, it's
Plastic Man! Plastic Man! Plastic Man!
That's right, it's the Plasticcast, a brand new podcast dedicated to Plastic Man. I'm your host, Max Romero. Together we'll be talking about Plastic Man in the Golden Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and every other age you can think of, right up to his upcoming reappearance in DC Rebirth. We'll also be talking about any Plastic Man news that might be coming up, and his appearances in every media from comics to cartoons. Whew. Makes me woozy just to think about it. I hope you'll join me to talk about the longest arm of the law, here on the Plasticcast, here on the Fire and Water Podcast Network.
Plastic Man! Plastic Man!
And now back to Head Speaks. Welcome to this segment of Behind the Podcast. Joining me is another guest I've had on a couple of my shows. He's got his own show, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. I've got the amazing Clinton Robinson. Hey there, Clinton.
Hey, Aaron. How's it going?
Going good. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to talk to me. I always enjoy talking to other people. So, real quick, like I said, this is Behind the Podcast, where I talk to you about your podcasting and how you got started and all that good stuff. So, let's start at the beginning. Why don't you tell us what's the name of your show And tell us a little about your show.
My show is the Coffee and Comics Podcast. I more or less review a comic or associated media, hopefully in the span of time to drink a cup of coffee. But it seems like every so often I kind of go over and everybody might need a refill or two.
Very nice. And so let's start from the beginnings. How did you come up with the idea for the show?
Well, I started off with the Coffee and Comics blog. I really have no idea for sure exactly how I came up with the title for the blog. It was just kind of one of those, well, I like coffee and I like comics, so I decided I would blog about comics while drinking coffee, and it just kind of evolved from there. As far as getting into podcasting itself, I ended up guesting on a few other people's podcasts, Rob Kelly's Film and Water, Ryan Daly's Secret Origins, and Professor Allen's Quarterbin podcast. And from there, it was just kind of one of those like, well, the natural leap seems to be moved from the blog to the podcast.
And again, these are some standard questions I have. We'll go from there. But what was your vision when you first started doing your actual podcast? Did you have a vision for it? What would you thought?
My vision, have more than 6 people listen.
Did you plan on just doing the one show? Do you maybe eventually plan on expanding out doing other shows?
At first, yeah, I pretty much was just like, let's stick to the one, see if we can manage to crank that out for a year or so. And here I am, depending on exactly when this releases, I'm probably right around 2 years into the podcast. So I'm looking at expanding into other projects, but not entirely sure exactly where everything's going.
And so, again, you've listened to the podcast before you started, I'm sure. You were guesting on some shows that you started your own. So how has things turned out any different than you originally thought?
Oh, wow. Different. More than 6 people listen to the show.
That's always a good thing. I know when you plan out doing a podcast, you're like, well, this is what I plan on doing. Maybe this segment's going to have, or this is what I'd like to do, or this and that. Did things change, or is it pretty much what you envisioned when you started doing the podcast? Is it still going along that, or is it morphed any? Or
for the most part, right now, the show is more or less how it started. Just a simple review, or not even necessarily a review, more of just a synopsis of an issue and my thoughts on it. People have been willing to be on the show, so I guess that's where it's morphed a bit. But no, I mean, the show itself, I would say, is still more or less in its infancy compared to many other podcasts. So it still has some room to grow, I think.
We all do. So far, like I say, you've been doing this a little while now. What are some of the biggest obstacles that you've encountered trying to do your show?
Real life scheduling. I mean, that's one thing. I did start out, I told everybody from the first episode this would be an occasional podcast when I could get to it. Nothing concrete on exactly when it comes out. I try to do at least one a month. I mean, that's my minimum goal, and I feel really terrible if I don't meet it. But just real life scheduling in order to be able to record and edit and get stuff released. That's a lot of the hurdles I have to deal with. Other than that, just trying to come up with ideas for what I'm going to cover and, see what would be popular or what wouldn't. But at the end of the day, it's, not to sound like a jerk, but it's kind of one of those, well, it's my show. I'll talk about what sounds fun to me and see what everybody else thinks. If everybody hates it, feel free to write in and say you hated that issue. I'd love to hear it.
And actually, along those lines, I've said this before, and some of the other guests have said the same thing. When you do a podcast, you've got to do it for yourself because you can't know what everyone's going to like. So you do something you like, and hopefully other people will like what you like.
Right, and plus, I mean, for most all of us that are podcasting about comics, this is our break from work. This is our relaxation time. So, I mean, if you're not podcasting about something that you're going to have fun with, then I don't see how you're going to do an enjoyable podcast.
Yeah. Move a little more personal. Do you have a family? Are you married? Or
I am married. My wife Rachel and I have been married for 15 years, and we've got 2 wonderful kids, Alex and Sakura.
Oh, very nice. And how does your family? Are they aware that you're a podcast? Or are you doing this in secret in your basement? Or
who told you about the podcast cave?
I've got one myself.
Oh, okay. No, they know I podcast. My son has said he's listened to an episode or 2. I'm not sure if he has or not, but If he has, then great. If not, then also great. But no, my family's pretty cool about letting me have some podcast time.
And do you have any plans for maybe them joining your shows or having them as a guest or anything? Or do you have your wife or any of the kids? How old are your kids?
My kids are preteens.
Oh, okay. So do you any plans for them being on the show or anything? Or
Not at the moment. I'm really the one that likes comics.
Right.
My daughter likes DC superhero girls, though, so we may have to talk about that at some point.
I'm just curious. My daughter, she's currently 9, and she's got her own show. She hasn't done an episode in a while, but she's very much my daughter. She likes comics because Daddy likes them, so Daddy's into podcasting, so she wants to do some podcasting. So I'm just curious, other people with family, with especially kids, if the kids are following in Daddy's footsteps. I say Daddy, but
well, no, my kids' thing is YouTube. So they record stuff like live streams from their video games and DIY projects and stuff. So
very nice. And so you plan on getting your wife on, or how does she feel about appearing on your show?
I don't know. That would take a lot of convincing, probably. She's shy.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people. What do you enjoy most about the podcasting?
I really enjoy just getting to meet everybody. Well, I say meet, talk to everybody via email, social media, podcasting, back and forth, stuff like this. It's really opened up a whole new world of getting to talk to comics fans.
Very much. And I say, especially with the internet and Facebook and things like that, you can talk to people all over the world, the country. Like I've talked about, I'm on the West Coast. Most of the people I talk to are on East Coast or Midwest. So if it wasn't for podcasting, I probably wouldn't have met a lot of these people I talked with. And like maybe Shag or who else I'll talk about? Maybe Pat. I forget now. A lot of these people are I've known through their podcasts. And kind of like friends.
Yeah.
And again, I wouldn't have that without the podcast, so I very much agree with you on that one. Speaking of podcasters and shows, is there any guests that you would like to get on your show, either famous people you like to try to get, or is there anything in particular that you're looking to try to get on your show?
Oh, Lord. Are we talking like just dream guests, or?
Yeah. Anyone that you'd really like to have on your show?
Oh, wow.
Is there like professional or someone famous or another podcaster that you'd really like to talk to? Anyone that you'd like to have on your show?
Wow. Well, I mean, I've had several other people on my show already, people that I never would have dreamed even listen to the show. I still need to get you on there at some point.
Yeah, definitely be glad to be on your show.
Gosh, I mean, anybody who's even halfway interested in being on the show, I'm sure I would say, sure, come on down. You're the next contestant on The Price is Right kind of thing. But wow, as far as like big name creators, I mean, I would absolutely love to be able to talk to somebody like George Perez or Dan Jurgens or just really anybody. Shea Fontana from DC Superhero Girls, I'd love to talk to. But even smaller creators like the people from Alterna Comics, I'd like to talk to them. I'm open for anybody. I'm impressed when anybody is like, hey, I published, this one comic 30 years ago. I'm like, great. I'd love to talk to you about it. I've never read it, but give me 5 minutes. I'll flip through it and we'll find something to say about it.
Yeah, because we talked about your relatively new podcast compared to some of the others. Do you have any advice for new podcasters? Any things you ran into that you'd like to say, hey, if you talk to someone that's starting a new podcast, any do's or don'ts for them?
Just don't. Because you'll be obsessed with it. It's your new addiction. But no. Any real advice? I'm no wise sage. Like you said, I've been around just a few years, so I probably don't know near as much as anybody else. But my advice would be, if you think you want to do it, jump in head first. Because, I mean, if you toe the waters, you're going to say maybe yes, maybe no. Just jump right in, give it a shot, see if it's for you. Be ready to set aside some time because editing is going to take a little while. Have some patience and get used to the sound of your own voice.
Yeah, you kind of halfway said don't, that, it becomes an addiction. You're not the first person that said that, actually. In fact, I said that. I started with one show. And within a year or two, I was up to 4 shows. So, and I've got other shows I'd like to do. I just don't have time to do them. So yeah, you're not completely wrong there. Well, Well, you have other thoughts on podcasting? Anything else you want to share with the audience?
Oh, gosh.
Anyone you want to tell
And here I will reveal Shag's... No, everybody's already revealed Shag's name. It's Quincy. But, no, gosh, for anybody who's listening who hasn't listened to a wide variety of shows, definitely get out there and listen, see what else is out there. I'm not trying to dissuade people from your show.
Yes, you are.
Get out there and hear what else Aaron has to say on other shows. No. But no, realize...
there are a wide variety of podcasts out there. All right, well, again, thank you very much. So before you take off, would you like to tell everybody where they can find you if they actually want to hear your show?
Oh, gosh, I don't know why they'd want to, but at this point, they probably heard me go on longer than most people really stand to listen to me. But no, if you want to listen to me, I do a show called the Coffee and Comics Podcast. You can find it on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they call it now, and on Stitcher Radio. You can find it directly on the website, coffeeandcomicspodcast.blogspot.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Coffee Comics Blog.
Well, again, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate talking to you. You're always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again sometime soon.
All right.
Thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Head Speaks. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know. Drop me an email to head@headspeaks.com or visit our home at head.headspeaks.com. You can also visit and talk with me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. You can also send an MP3 file with your thoughts and I can play that on the air. And you can also get more of me on my other podcasts. Be sure to listen to Task Force X, where monthly I look at John Ossinger's Suicide Squad and Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate comics from the 80s and early 90s. Also, over on G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, my podcasting friends Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, along with myself, are looking at all of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero comics and related titles from Marvel and IDW. All of my headcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher, along with the respective blogs and my main page at headspeaks.com. All comments, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Head Speaks are owned wholly by the speaker of said comments and do not express the opinions of Head Speaks, unless, of course, I'm the one making the comments. Head Speaks, Task Force X, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast are all part of the Headcast family. So join us next month for another wonderful episode of Head Speaks. Until then, I'll see you in the funny pages. Good night.